Yeah, this is a little bit different this week. Amanda is not able to be with us, but she hasn't gone anywhere, so nobody needs to worry about that. So I'm excited. This is my first time ever doing a one-on-one interview, and before I bring Rebecca on, I'm just kind of go through her pretty awesome bio here, and I'll just kind of break it down into a few things. But today we got Rebecca Miller on. Rebecca has over 8 years of experience in digital marketing and is currently the account director at the New York City-based digital marketing agency Path Interactive. Rebecca, you've had a background in SEO. You then created and grew the company's account management team to lead the strategic direction of marketing campaigns across SEO. We'll get into that. Paid media, social media, website design, as well as other integrations on non-digital channels. Along with all these things, I know your focus has been B2C brands with clients from e-commerce to healthcare and the educational apps to real estate. And I can't wait to hear more about that. And then this is my favorite. You're also living the good life. You've been working remotely and traveling full time with your husband since 2017. So we're all incredibly jealous. Rebecca, welcome to Real Estate Ready.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
I know. I read that last part. I was like, yeah, she's living the life. She's been
Yeah.
traveling remotely. You were ahead of the COVID curve.
I was ahead of the COVID curve. That's right.
It,
Yeah, a little homebound now. We're not used to that piece. Usually we move around a lot, but it's been good to set in some roots a little bit, but we'll be
good,
moving on soon.
good. Well, I love having you on, and your company's based out of New York City. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay,
Yep.
and you're in Rochester.
I'm currently in Rochester, New
All
York.
right,
Yep.
North New York. I know. Yeah,
Yeah, near Canada, like,
yeah.
7-hour drive from the city, not Westchester.
That's right. Yeah. Exactly. My dad's from Westchester. We were talking before we jumped on, but listen, this is, I think, something that's so on point, and with everything going on, and we're all working. Here we are on a Zoom call and everything like that. And
Hmm.
I think as before we dive in, why don't you just kind of give us a background how you got involved in this? I mean, obviously, this is
Yeah,
the way that everything's going, and just a little backstory to your path to this digital marketing world.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I went to school, I don't even know how many years ago now. I'm not that old, but it seems like I'm that old. And when I graduated, I knew that I wanted to be in something that was like creative related, but still had a path and a career where I could make money.
We should let everybody. You went to Bucknell
Oh
University.
yeah, I went to Bucknell University, Ray
Yep,
Bucknell, for all those Bucknellians out there.
absolutely great school.
Um, awesome school, and I majored in the two things that my parents, it was like their worst nightmare: Spanish and art history. So they always tease me. They're like, "You're just going to be a barista somewhere."
Oh, that's
Uh, but it's all about transferable skills. That's what I preach. So ended up wanting to get into marketing because I felt like that would be a good combination of my communication skills and something that was kind of creative, but with a business drive, like I was mentioning, where I could make money and I wouldn't just be an art teacher or, teaching Spanish somewhere, which I really wasn't my passion. So figured that I should get into marketing or advertising. Seemed like a good fit. And ended up moving to New York City. Some of my best friends were there and interviewed at essentially every advertising or marketing firm that would look at my resume.
how many advertising firms are in New York City, first of all?
I don't even know.
How did you even start with
Thousands.
that? Yeah. Oh my gosh, the yellow pages.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Especially if you count like all the 2 or 3 person firms that are like,
Yeah.
really hitting the pavement. But I ended up at Path Interactive, which is New York City based, and have grown with the company essentially for the last 8 years. And like I said, I started on the SEO side, and really I led a team to focus solely on SEO for our clients. But at the time, we were still a pretty small company. And there was this huge opportunity to create an account management department because of just how things were structured. That was a big need for us.
Hmm.
So I worked with the management team to create that department, really to make sure that on an ongoing basis, our clients would have a holistic service for not just SEO or not just paid media if we were doing that for them, but holistic, and really driving forward that integrated digital service for them. So that's really where I've been focusing my attention for the past, I think, 5 years now. And, growing the team. There's now a bunch of amazing account people with me on the team, and we really manage all types of clients. So, like you said, e-commerce, for fashion, for apps. We do real estate and educational clients,
Hmm.
really the gamut. We are an agency, so we don't focus on anything in particular, which is
Right.
great because you get experience. You can see how things work or don't work across your clients.
No,
Um,
I love that. I was just looking at the site right now and kind of seeing the clients and everything like that. And how
mhm.
long has Path Interactive been around for? When was that?
Ooh, that's a good trivia question. I would say I'm going to say 12 years,
Okay. I'm on
12 or
their account,
13.
so I don't see it, but that's, yeah.
Yeah,
No,
we had our 10-year a couple years ago, so I'm going off of that.
I know it's 10 years. I know it's 10 years. So I think kind of before we dive into the real estate stuff and how this all
Mhm.
ties in together, I kind of want to go over, you know, when you say paid media, like
Mhm.
what is paid media? SEO, search engine optimization. My wife was
Correct.
in there,
Yep.
so I think I got that better. Right, yeah. But so let's just give kind of our listeners just a little, like, just a quick overview of some of these terms that we're going to dive into, and then
Sure.
it'll help them relate how they could apply this to the real estate market and everything like that. So when you said paid media, what is paid media?
Yeah, that's actually a really great point. Please stop me at any point to be like,
No,
what does that mean?
no, no. This is no, no. I will stop you.
Yeah, yeah. We have so many acronyms. We have so many words, like buzzwords that I am used to. It's my daily life,
Yep.
but a lot of people aren't used to them. So that's a very good point. Yeah. So paid media, and SEO are both terms that essentially relate to the visibility for something online. Paid media is in relation to anything that you pay for to get that visibility, and search engine optimization, or well, I just said it, SEO,
Yeah.
is what we call the organic side, so non-paid.
So, like, if you were gonna buy advertising on a Facebook, like I've done
Mhm.
this before, like you spend $30. I mean, honestly, it's not.
Mhm.
That's your paid media. You're
Yes,
paying Facebook to sit there and put an ad on their
correct.
browser. Oh yeah. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. So paid media, you'll see when you do a Google search, you'll see ads at the top. You'll see shopping ads sometimes if it's a brand for with a product. When you go to a news site or you're reading content online and you see those banner ads on the top or the right that are probably showing you a product you had just viewed on a website in the past week,
Yep.
that's all paid advertising. Anything on social media where you see a sponsored ad. Even there's podcast advertising. So really there's a lot of different channels or tactics for paid media. And I won't go into too much detail until we
That's all
need
right.
to, but
Sure.
there's a lot of different ways that you can reach your audience with different types of paid media
What,
ads.
if you're a real estate agent, just to kind of go on what
Yeah.
you're just saying, what are some of these? What would you suggest to a real estate agent in terms of these platforms?
Yeah, and I think that comes back to, if you're on your own or if you're working with a bigger firm, that's going to depend. Because if it's a bigger firm, I'm sure they have their own marketing program that's happening,
Yeah.
that maybe they have a working relationship with the brokers where they feature you in a certain geographic segment for a certain period of time,
Hmm.
or something like that. I'm making it up.
No,
Or
that's
if
all right.
you're on your own and you want to reach your own audience in your own geographic area, then you need to be pretty niche in terms of how you advertise. Like, I wouldn't recommend going on Google with a paid search ad and bidding on the term real estate,
Yeah.
because you are going to hit every generic term where real estate is part of a search for people all over the country.
So, yeah, I love that point you just made there. And so I just want to go back to that real quick. I don't mean to
Yeah.
kind of interrupt your flow there, but so everybody knows you can go on and buy specific terms, and try to
Correct.
get, so if somebody goes, I want to, what's a real estate agent in Colorado? Okay, so
Mm,
you can go in there and buy real estate in Colorado. It's going to cost you an arm and a leg, and you still might not get onto that first page of the search
that's right.
volume. Okay. So
Yeah.
and how do people actually go on and buy those terms and everything like that?
Yeah, well, you need to create accounts with
Okay.
Google, with Facebook, wherever. These are called the publishers. Google is a publisher, and based on where you want to advertise, if it's a search ad, if it's a shopping ad, if it's a display ad, which are those banners you see when you're reading news sites,
Yep.
then you can create those basically like sub accounts within the publisher and create your campaigns, your bidding structure, the terms you're going to bid on, the contextual, like it gets pretty deep pretty
It's
fast.
crazy. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So that's why we have experts that do that at our company.
No, and I think that's kind of what I wanted to go over these things, and so people can understand how it works, and then they can kind of apply it and everything like
Of
that. So
course.
with SEO, I know. So we have the paid media out there. You're
Mhm.
going out there buying terms, and you're buying space on Facebook, whatever. SEO. Talk a little bit about it. It feels more organic, from what I kind
Yep.
of understand. And what's your kind of take, Rebecca, on that?
Yeah, so SEO is a long game. It's not something that happens overnight. Paid media, you can start to see results pretty quickly because you're essentially paying for those visits or those clicks. But SEO, you really need to have, well, first of all, you need a website
Hmm.
for you to optimize. And there's ways that you optimize with technical aspects, with how Google like reads the site from a technical perspective. Content is a huge play, and also user experience. So you really need to have an optimized website from all of those levels. And it's not too difficult. Like anyone that even doesn't have digital experience can create a website pretty simply and start to build out what that website holds and then slowly optimize it with tweaks here and there. The catch is, depending on what you want to show up for. So, again, if we come back to the term real estate,
Yep.
it's going to be really hard for your site as a small person with a new domain that you haven't been creating content very long or doing a linking strategy. It's going to take years for your domain to build up the authority for Google to say, out of these millions of websites that mention and talk about this term, we want to pick yours for the first page.
Right. Yeah. It's so
So
interesting.
it's a really long haul, and usually for individual business owners or individual real estate brokers, for example, it's going to be going after those niche terms that are very specific to your area where there might not be millions of searches a month. Maybe there's only 200 a month, but there's not as much competition for that term with only 200 searches a month, and
Right.
it's in your area. And if you can rank for it or get good visibility with paid and SEO, which they help each other out,
Okay.
then you can start to gain that momentum. And slowly, it's kind of like a tangential increase. Like if you can rank for that 200 searches a month term, then you can slowly start to add on other terms that are related, and Google will see that and they'll start to rank you for those terms too. And you can slowly build your way up.
It's so funny you kind of describe it like that. So my wife uh, owns a food blog. Okay.
Okay.
And so and prior to that she was a digital marketing executive. That's where she learned all about SEO and
Yeah.
everything. And I remember she's about a year and a half into it, and I'd love to get your take on her stuff anyways, but regardless, it was interesting because I was like, well, why don't you go do a recipe for, like, spaghetti and meatballs? Just use that as an example. And she's like, well, because there's a million people searching
Exactly.
for spaghetti and meatballs. She was like, I'm never going to show up. And so if she does something like maybe, a vegetarian zucchini lasagna or something like that, then she can go in there and go, okay, there's 2,000 searches a month on this. I have a
Right.
chance to get on there. And I had no idea about this. I'm like, well, you got a food blog. You got to do, like, steak and mashed potatoes. She's like, oh,
Yeah.
that's not how this works. And
Exactly.
and so, tying that in, let's just say you're a new real estate agent or a new lender, for that matter, and you're in Rochester or Fort Collins. Um, and you have a website. You've created this website. You're trying to build up your brand. If somebody is in Fort Collins or Rochester and they go on Google and they just type in real estate.
Mm-hmm.
I guess my question is, how much does location play a factor in all of this? And so, like, if you go Northern Colorado real estate or Northern New York real estate, you know, do you have a better fighting chance to kind of get seen on that platform? Because people are, I don't know how many people just type in real estate, but they might go, God, Fort Collins real estate, what's going on there?
Right.
So, is there I'm trying to figure out a way to say this. Is like there a way for people out there saying, hey, SEO takes years. Obviously,
Mm-hmm.
Google needs to see traffic, there needs to be people going there. But are there tips and tricks or ways where you can kind of focus it to more of a local market within Google, or is that even something that Google does?
I mean, Google's really smart, but the problem with even those terms like Fort Collins and real estate, I just did a search on Google myself,
Okay.
and
Okay.
the first half of the page is all ads.
I'm gonna do it right now.
And
Yeah.
yeah, it's fun to look at these things.
Real
And right
estate.
underneath
So
the
what
websites that are popping up. Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, what is the first thing that pops up when you do that?
For me, it's coloradopropertyfinder.com and it's an
That's the
ad.
second one for me. So I
Okay.
have
They will
I
be slightly different because we're in different locations.
Okay, yeah, that this is good to know. You're in New York and I'm in Fort Collins. I'm curious to see what pops up. Gotcha.
Yeah. So that does change. And that could be from an ad perspective, that could be based on how those companies are bidding. They might be spending less money on a user who's in Rochester versus someone who's already in Fort Collins in order
Okay.
to be at the top of those ads.
Okay.
So there's a whole game you can play with that, but you will see different listings, both in organic and the paid ads. Or well, organic isn't an ad, but
Yeah.
so if you scroll down underneath those ads, you're seeing companies like realtor.com, Zillow.com, Redfin,
Hmm.
Trulia, coloproperty.com, Century 21. So these are the behemoths of the real estate world, no matter where you are.
Okay.
And you will never, ever outrank them, which is the sad truth, but it's the truth. So you might as well take it in stride.
Well, so let's just take that. So, we know we're never going to be at the top of that list, and so
Hmm.
we've got a good breakdown of like what SEO is, what paid advertising is. So I just kind of want to start diving into how a real estate professional can kind of, I guess, break into this game. Because the one thing I
Definitely.
looked on mine, I'm curious, is as I scroll down, then you get into that little section. It goes, people also ask, blah blah blah, and now I
Mhm.
have actually three local companies that popped up. One of which is Kyle Bassner. Shout out to Kyle. Him and I are working on a deal together. He's a
Okay.
local real estate agent, and he's got 136 looks like Google reviews, and so he's
Oh,
like
cool. I don't see that.
so you don't see that. So that's
I don't
interesting.
see that.
So I was just curious, so now that made me think, okay, here's Kyle, he's got great presence. He's like the only name that's really showed up on my Google search when my dog is right next to me, by the way. And so I think I kind of want to go into how a real estate agent or a lender can, I guess, try to create a presence on SEO. Like, what are your thoughts on that? Create like, we were thinking about doing like, nocolending.com or something, or like, your
Hmm.
noco real estate agent. What are your thoughts on trying to kind of breaking that down and trying to be seen?
Yeah, I mean, just coming back, unless you're creating content that's really helpful for like other real estate agents or lenders, and you're
Yeah,
again just really niche, like I highly doubt any particular individual domain would rank over those behemoths.
gotcha.
However, that being said,
Yeah,
just because you're not on the first page doesn't mean you won't get any traffic at all and that you shouldn't try. Also, because there are some crafty ways that you can use the Google search result pages to pop up. So depending on the types of results that show up, um, for example, like you just mentioned, people also search for, and for me, that section has like little images that you can click on, and it's a new search that pops up for you with new results.
yep.
And I clicked on one of those, and a a box popped up about halfway down the page underneath the ads that has Colorado Springs real estate. It has a little snippet. It has a number of homes for sale. I'm not sure exactly. Oh, they're pulling it from greatcoloradohomes.com, which
Okay.
maybe is a local site. So
Okay.
that's a particular type of result that Google will pull in if there's informational content on a site that's really helpful, that people are engaging with well, if it's set up well from an SEO standpoint. Another example is the answer boxes. So if you click on, where you see like people also ask, and it's usually a drop down, and if you click on it, it'll it'll include the answer, it'll include a link, and then
Yep.
more of those questions with the drop down pop up. That's called the answer box. I'm pretty sure my
Okay.
SEO team will ding me if I say
That's
that
right.
wrong.
Sorry. I'm going with what you're saying.
But those answers, when you look, so the first one that popped up for me is Colorado Springs a good place to invest in real estate? And the answer is coming from mashvisor.com, which is a blog. Another one is coming from Redfin.
I got it.
Another
I
one is
have one.
coming
Is
from
it expensive?
KRDO.
Yeah. Is it expensive to live in Fort Collins? Bestplaces.net. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
So
it.
these answers, Google is pulling those in from a variety of different sites, and it's not just the behemoths. So if you're able to answer
Oh,
really great questions like that and have that type of content on your site, and you mark it up with the schema appropriately, and you do your links, your interlinks appropriately on your site, you can possibly get ranked for those things. And if you can, you can get
interesting.
huge amounts of traffic to your site. We've had success stories with clients where we're able to get in an answer box, which is very high up, but we can't rank on the first page, and
Yeah.
our results are amazing.
That okay. The answer box. Because we have all seen it. I mean,
Yeah.
it's right. It's funny. It's like how many high schools are in Fort Collins? U.S. News. I mean, all these is Fort Collins a good place to live. So, and that's I see it right here, niche.com. Yeah, yeah, I gotcha. So get it. So if you can provide an answer to a question that would make it into the question box, that's a way you can basically build that SEO.
Yeah, which comes back to the basic point of starting small and starting niche and then growing bigger and more general with your content.
Okay. No, I love that. I just I have some questions that we want to make sure we hit here, and Rebecca, you've kind of touched on it, but how real estate pros can create a consistent marketing strategy, and I think that
Mm-hmm.
the operative word there is consistent.
Yes.
How much does consistency play in this? And I think we all know the answer to this, and it's just so hard to implement. Say, hey, we need to
Yeah.
do a post every Tuesday, but we'll talk about consistency and how Google likes that and how that plays in digital marketing.
Yeah, consistency is tough because you also want to provide value.
Right.
So you don't just want to post for posting's sake. If you have something to say and it's meaningful and people will get value out of that, then post it.
Yeah.
I read a couple articles recently, and it was about basically how often should you blog? If you're going to be a blogger, how often should you blog? And the answer was like, well, whenever you can. Maybe start out once a week, but start out with something that's doable. Maybe that's once a month. Maybe that's once a week. Maybe
Yeah.
that's once a day. Like, what can you commit to where you will continually be providing value to your audience? So that's a very, can't give you a
No, but
straight answer on
it's
that.
no, I think that's so huge. And like when we talk about business plans in implementing strategies and stuff like that, my team and I were always like, whatever we decide to do today, we have to commit to doing it,
Yes.
whatever
Yep.
that is. Like, I
Yep.
don't even care what it is. I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page. It's like, if we're going to do a interest rate market update every 2 weeks, we better do that thing every 2 weeks.
That's
Else,
right.
as people are just going to fall off, like, oh, I really enjoyed that. And then the next week it
Mhm.
wasn't there, they're going to be completely
Yeah. If
over
you're
it.
going to say you're going to do something, then do it. That is definitely key.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to go down this next one here. So how real estate pros can create a personal brand separate from their agency or brokerage. And I think this is huge because um, I remember when I got with Caliber Home Loans, and they have a whole website that they all have. It's all
Hmm.
corporate and everything's built. And it's funny, my wife was looking at it and she's like, well, there's no funnel. Like when somebody goes onto my website, really the only thing that you're going to have to track them is if they fill out a loan application. But
Hmm.
they might not want to do that. They might want to just say, hey, I have a question about this. And, talking about kind of bringing that in and bringing that funnel. And I think like whether you work for a Keller Williams or a Remax or some of these huge players and everything like that, if if you have a real estate professional that comes to you and just says, how do you separate that from like the corporate side versus the personal side? And are there some things that you just can't do because their corporate is going to come in and say, nope, you can't do that kind of marketing, you
Right.
can't do that kind of branding? Where is that? Is there a gray area in there, kind of, and what is that all about?
Yeah, so I think you hit on something really good, which is what can you do? If you are
Yeah.
working for something like Remax, I'm sure there are some rules and regulations in
Oh yeah.
place. So, step number one, what can you do? If you aren't restricted, then by all means, like start your own website. It's
Yeah.
not that difficult. And I know that sounds, easy for me to say, right? I'm in
So, hey,
digital, but
so really on starting your own website, like, so I have a GoDaddy account. And so I
uh-huh.
literally, I'm in the process of creating a new team domain. And I mean, that's what I do. I just sit there and type in over and over again until I find something that hits. Do you have, what do you use for if somebody was going to start a website?
Yeah, I
Just buy
actually
a
have a
domain.
whole list of tools that I prepared for this podcast.
Oh, oh, okay.
That I can send you if you want to share with your listeners as well.
Yeah.
But I mean, just in terms of, well, first of all, finding a domain name, there's tools called Panabi and Namecheck, which make it a lot easier to type something in. It's called
Okay.
Panabe, Panabi, and the second one is Namecheck. And
Yeah.
so those are two examples of tools where you can see if your domain name is available rather than having to to actually type it into Google or your search bar, and maybe other iterations that are like it, if not the exact same thing. So you can start to get a sense there if you're looking for a domain. Um, but then once you get your domain, you can register it with something like GoDaddy, which is
Okay.
pretty easy. Or you can usually buy like through WordPress or Squarespace. I think Wix also has an option where you can like have it hosted through them.
Oh,
So it
interesting.
won't be your specific domain name.com. It'll be what's called a subdomain of their main one. So, RebeccaMiller.wordpress.com instead
Okay.
of RebeccaMiller.com. But you can also host through that. And the CMS, the content management system,
Yes.
like Wix or WordPress or Square, is essentially the place where once you have the technical thing of having your domain, um, that's where you populate it with your content
Yeah.
and with your design. And depending on how intricate you want to get, how easy you want it to be, you can choose your CMS. So Wix and Square
Okay.
make it very easy to plug and play with the designs and the themes they have, versus WordPress, which is much more customizable, but it takes a bit more work, still doable,
Yep.
in order to create your design.
So you create your design, you create your website and everything like that. And then what other steps can they take in terms of, when we talk about, creating that personal brand that's completely different than like a major player?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it comes back to the basics, right? So it's like, who is your audience? What are you trying to communicate? What are people going to get out of working with you? Like essentially, what's your message? What is
Yeah.
your brand? You got
Yep.
to figure that out before you start spewing things, or maybe you start spewing things and then you narrow it in.
Yeah.
You got to find what works for you. But it's really thinking through like, what are people going to get out of working with you? And when you know who your audience is, which isn't too difficult in the real estate market, but
Right.
making sure you're a little more niche if you can. Where do they spend their time? Especially, where do they spend their time online?
Yeah.
And what are your goals? Are you looking for just to create a relationship with people on an informational basis, like you were talking about? Or
Hmm.
are you trying to get them to contact you to set up an appointment or have you represent them in a real estate, buying a home? So knowing what you want out of that is really going to help you make the decisions you need for what content should be on your site, what types of pages you should have on your site, how you should segment those pages, the calls to action you should have, things like that. Uh, but I mean, that you can always get into optimizing and testing. So that doesn't need to be figured out when you launch your site. Like it is much better to get something live and then play with it than it is to tinker with it to ad nauseum and it never going live.
I think that is huge. I think You hit the nail on the head right there. Don't overthink it. Just start.
No.
Just start. Like with this podcast, we were like, let's just start doing it. Let's just
Yeah.
start interviewing people. Like, I mean, we
Yeah.
like not like, hey, we got a degree in podcasting or whatever. Nobody knows. Nobody's ever done this. So
Right.
you're doing it, and you just kind of start creating your own little thing. And I think that's super important for people to like. There's a great quote, and whether regardless what people think about Amazon and Bezos and that whole thing, but there's tons of documentation about that company going, we don't, it doesn't need to be perfect. We just throw it
Mhm.
out there, you know,
Yeah.
and if it doesn't work, we take it away real quick. But it's amazing how if you just kind of throw something against the wall and just run with it, what can kind of develop and kind of create its own just kind of body, you know, it's his own thing. So
Definitely.
I'm a huge believer in that. I wanted to kind of go back around, Rebecca. Um, Educational apps for real estate. What is an educational app?
Oh,
When you
well,
mentioned educational app, yeah. I was like, so what? And Amanda and I were chat. She's like, you got it. What does she mean by educational
maybe I should have
app?
put a comma in there.
No, that's all right. It's all
I
right.
meant educational app and real
Real
estate.
estate. Okay. I was thinking like you could build your own app. I'm like, wow, I never even thought about
Well, I guess you
that.
could team up with a developer and get going,
I know.
That
No,
could be a very unique way. Here we go. That could be a unique way to like gain, some followers, get an app that's very unique. If you have an app as a real estate agent, maybe that's an easy way people can contact you or look at your listing. Like,
so all right.
if
Look,
anyone
this
does
as we
that,
kind
give
of
me credit.
I will. And I was just gonna say this kind of ties into like as we kind of wrap everything up, but like everything that's going on in the world with COVID and Zoom and all these things, and
Hmm.
the housing market is obviously just been crazy busy, and on the lending side, we've never been busier. But what you've been in this for a long, long time, and if somebody came to you, new lender, new real estate agent, was like, Rebecca, I need to I gotta get into digital marketing. I need, I have my website, I have a LinkedIn page, I have a Facebook page, I have a Twitter account. Like they have all these accounts set up. I mean, what would you tell this Mr. Buyer, Mr. Agent, or Mr. Lender, or Mrs. Agent? Like, say, hey, all right, this is what I think you should do over the next 3 months, over the next 6 months, over the next year or two, because SEO is going to take a long time. What are
Hmm.
some things that you would tell this new agent or somebody? Maybe the agent's been around for 20 years, but they don't know anything about digital marketing. They were in the
Hmm.
newspaper, 20 years ago.
Right.
What would you tell that agent or lender right now, kind of going into this whole new world that's going on right
Yeah, that's a really great question. I mean, back to what we were kind of just talking about, I would say first and foremost, if you can,
now? Yeah.
create a website,
Yep.
even if it's just a single page that has information about you, where you're working. Maybe there's, if you have like a freebie download or some sort of like informational tidbit that they
Yep.
can sign up with their email to download and start building an email list because you need
Okay.
to build an audience in order to speak to anyone.
Hmm.
So, a website is one of the best ways you can do that. And then your Facebook, and then your LinkedIn, and all of those pages can be conduits where you can post additional information or you're having conversations with people and you know, you're bringing value to those audiences where you're already part of different groups and things, and you can send them to your website and you can engage more people and get them to sign up. So it's like this cycle where
Yeah.
you're using your website as a way to, at the bottom of the funnel, get people to do what you want them to do, even if it's just, send your email. I won't spam you, but you get this
Mhm.
great, new white paper I did. I don't know, I'm making this up
No, that's
for,
right.
the real estate market right now in Fort Collins and what it means for you during COVID. Like, if you can create information, is how you get people nowadays, especially to join your audience, to join your group. And the more that you can nurture them with content on Facebook, maybe with paid ads, maybe with your SEO blog or something like that, and you can get them in, then you can continue to nurture them with email drips. You can
Right.
segment them into different types of, um, what's the word I'm looking for? But like your different audience types. Is it someone who's a new homeowner? Is it someone
Yeah,
who's bought homes
time home buyer,
before?
refinance. Yeah, yeah,
Right. So who are they? Because they're going to want different types of content. You can email them, um, hey, I just have this new blog on refinancing, and I know these people will want to read it, and they click back through
right,
because the more value you can bring to your audience, the more they will trust you, the more of a relationship you can develop with them, even if you can't tangibly feel that or see them. Because maybe the next time that they're ready to buy a home, you're going to be top of mind
yeah,
because you've been providing them value. You've been helpful to them for all these years. And they reach out to you. Or if you are sending them an email, for example, that's more call to action, like, are you ready to buy a home? Now's a great time in Fort Collins. Then they'll be like, oh, yeah, this person knows what they're talking about. And I like what they're saying. So I'm going to set up a call.
right. What are some things that like you see that people where people miss something or make a mistake or just don't
Mhm.
get it? They don't see it right, or and it's just like they never quite get it correct. What are the big mistakes you see?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that is kind of two things related to messaging. One of them is being me, 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 where you only raise your own hand and you're like, look how amazing I am, look how great I am, which you need to do that to some point. You do have to
Right,
sell yourself, but
right.
to a point.
Yeah,
You That's why like testimonials are so huge, especially not just for services, but also for brands that sell products, because someone else is saying how great you are. And that kind of content can be on a website, that can be in a Facebook post, that can be part of ad copy. So that is a really big thing that people should leverage more. If you can get those testimonials from your current customers or something like that.
yeah. So when I first started at Caliber in Fort Collins, we didn't have a Google My Business page. And
Okay.
so so like now if I and I remember, and my wife was the one, she said you have to have this. So if you go in and type Caliber Home Loans
Mm-hmm.
for Collins right now, you're gonna see we have 93 Google reviews and a 5-star rating. And
That's
I've had
amazing.
and I've had people reach out to me over the last week or two, and I go, I'm like, I gotta ask, like, how'd you get my name? And they're like, honestly, I just Googled. And I'm like,
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
but like I look at that, and going back to Kyle Bassler when we're talking about real estate Fort Collins, he's got a Google page that's got 139 reviews and 5 stars. And I mean, I feel like this is incredibly important, and it's grown our
Yes.
business. I mean, and a Google My Business page is something that's incredibly easy to do. They basically
Mm-hmm.
send you something in the mail that verifies the address, verifies the business. It has an access code on it. You go back into Google My Business, you put it in there, and now here you are. You're up and running, and you show up on a Google map.
That's
Um,
actually superstar bonus points for you.
woo, woo.
That's actually a really great point that I totally missed. But yeah, if you have an office, get a Google My Business page listing stat,
Okay,
because you could see results like you just said.
it's
You have all
amazing.
these reviews. You can send people, hey, I had a great time working with you. Would you mind leaving me a quick review on Google? You can make it easy. You can have a link and an email out to
Yeah.
them, because that is extremely visible and that is something you will definitely own. And if you have good photos, high quality images, even just a small blurb, you don't need to update your Google My Business. That's kind of a passe thing now. But if you have
Okay.
it, like, claim it. That is
Yeah.
yours for the claiming.
No, I'm glad and that's been a huge thing. And then when I first started that page, that was only a year and a half ago. And I remember,
Mhm.
oh, we have 5 reviews and 6 reviews. And then I started telling like
People
my,
will leave them.
and then
Yeah.
I was just like, I told my other loan officers and everything like that. Um, and I said, hey, you should have clients leave reviews here. And so it would just boost all of us.
Yes.
I do have a question about Google reviews. So
Okay.
we did get a review last year, and it was a 1-star review, and I
Mhm.
read it. I'm like, and the guy wrote the same review at every single Caliber Home Loans um, Google page in all of Colorado.
Ooh, spammer.
Like a spammer, yeah, like every single one of them. And I went through and I looked at all the other Caliber Home Loan site. I'm like, this guy left like literally just copy and pasted everything. And the one thing that my wife told me, she goes, you always want to try to respond to your reviews. Like she goes,
Yes.
they Google loves that engagement. Like, oh, thank you so much. I loved it, blah, blah, blah. Or in this case,
Hmm.
this guy, I'm like, hey, you know what? I didn't see your file in our office. Let us know if we can help out. Um, you can't delete those reviews though, right? They're
No.
on there. So that's like, you have a Google page and you get a bad review. There's no deleting it, right? They're stuck on there forever. Okay.
Yes, they are, as far as I understand. But your wife is completely correct. Like, respond to the negative. It's just like Airbnb. If you see a
Right.
negative review, I mean, and people are also smart, right? Like, if I'm looking and if I'm looking to get a loan and I'm considering Caliber Home and I look at Google reviews and there are 92 4 and 5 star and one star,
Right.
obviously that seems kind of fishy. So it's also, if you have a couple bad reviews, unless you only have 5 reviews and like 4 of them are bad, like people are going to know that they're fake or it really doesn't hold any weight. So,
Mhm.
but regardless, you should still respond, because I actually just found that one you're talking about,
Yeah.
you can qualify it. If it was an actual situation, you can say, how you dealt with it, hopefully in a professional manner. And if it was totally unqualified, the way that you respond can also basically point that out.
Yeah.
So it's
No,
it's a win-win for people who are looking to see how you respond if you do, because that also can be extra bonus points, like, oh, this guy was really professional even though this was like a spammy dude.
yeah.
Like, this is a top-notch loan agency.
Yeah, people kind of see through that. And I feel like Google reviews are just such a huge, like people just Google everything. Like Google, hey, I'm gonna Google
Yep.
this, I'm gonna Google that. And then what
Yep.
pops up is really huge. Um, Rebecca, this has been awesome. I mean, I think, I learned a ton here, and I think people
Great.
just, the more they understand what's going on, I think the world, and I guess one of my last questions, and we have a couple of just fun little questions we'll ask you at the very end.
Sure.
But where do you see the future of digital marketing, and how do you think that's going to apply to real estate and lending and everything like that? I mean, you have the Zillows, the Redfins, the realtor.coms. Based on your experience, like, where do you see the future going with this stuff
Mhm.
and people searching for homes?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think in general, digital marketing, it's already been on the rise just during COVID itself
Hmm.
because of our situation. We're at home, we're not going into work, we're staying in our homes and we're going online basically for everything.
Yeah.
So reaching your audience is online. And so more companies are going towards those types of tactics. But even on online advertising or organic or social, there is some fluctuation in where people are paying for ads, and what's actually getting in return, because it also depends on what you're trying to do. So if you're a new real estate broker and you want awareness,
Yeah.
that's different than someone who is already known in the community and is just looking to convert people into new clients. Um, so for the person who's like looking to break out and let people know that they exist, you're going to do different types of digital marketing. You're going to do awareness campaigns on Facebook. You're
Hmm.
going to do maybe some display,
Yeah.
and maybe some more general bidding terms on Google search versus very specific things. So it really depends, again, back on what your goal is. But in general, I think it really comes back to content and messaging and how you relate to people
Yeah.
for any industry, not just real estate.
Yeah.
Because people want that authentic connection and they want something that's going to solve their problems and
Yeah.
isn't just more noise.
So
So
true.
it's like, what does that message look like and how can I get it out there effectively?
Do you work with any like individual real estate agents or lenders, or are you guys more on the company side of things, the bigger, like the corporate side?
Currently, it's just corporate, but you never know
Yeah, yeah.
if
I
anyone's
was just gonna say,
interested.
how can our listeners kind of, learn more about your company and what you're doing,
Hmm.
Rebecca, and maybe
Sure.
specifically, yeah.
Yeah, well, if anyone's interested in Path Interactive, which is the agency I work for, you can go to pathinteractive.com. That's our main website. You can find me on LinkedIn at LinkedIn/Rebecca Miller 33. And you can find the Path profile through there as well. And that would probably be the easiest way, either contacting me directly on LinkedIn or, reaching out to the company through, we have a website and an email form. And you can, mention my name, that you heard me on the podcast, and that'll help get things through probably a little bit quicker if you have
Cool.
questions.
Awesome.
Um, yeah.
I like it. All right. And then real quick, do you have a favorite book you're reading right now on digital marketing or anything like that? Or it does maybe it
Not
doesn't
on
marketing.
Yeah, not on digital marketing recently, but I'm really obsessed with the author Gretchen Rubin,
Okay.
uh, who
Is it the
I've
happier task? The happier podcast?
yes, she
Okay.
does the Happier podcast, and she's known for her book, The Happiness Project. She also created the Four Tendency Framework. So I'm reading through her Four Tendency book right now,
Cool.
which is essentially like, how do people react to expectations, inner or outer? And like, how does that influence if they act or not on things? So it's like a personality thing, but it doesn't replace any of the other personality tests that you can take, because there are millions. So yeah, I'm reading one of her books right now, but I love it.
I love it. Well, hey, listen, you have been amazing. Thank you so, so much.
Of
Uh,
course.
and yeah, this has been great.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure to speak digital to you.
Oh, you're very welcome.